and the March and March movement have established a joint working group to address grassroots community challenges, promote peaceful coexistence, strengthen community self-reliance, and hold government accountable. However, the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, GIWUSA, has criticized the initiative, describing it as an assault on the black poor. GIWUSA accuses AfriForum of seeking to preserve the economic privileges of apartheid-era capital, while alleging that March and March aims to reinforce racialized marginalisation and the labour reserve by targeting vulnerable communities. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by Mametlwe Sebei, President of the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa. Mametlwe, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, and pleasure to be here.
Now, the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa has described the collaboration between AfriForum and March and March as a convergence of reactionary forces. How so? And what common ground do you believe exists between what you describe as white nationalism and xenophobic mobilization?
Well, I think even describing this as rights organization is problematic, because what rights are any of these organizations fighting for? Because a right, by definition, has to be enjoyed by all. Otherwise, it becomes a privilege, right? And this is what exactly they are about. AfriForum has opposed every single measure to bring about a redress for the landless, majority of people that are also black, working class and poor in this country, opposing every form of affirmative action, land reform, as well as currently universal health coverage. They've as well attacked an attempt at the racializing number of schools by opening access to those particular schools where language is being used as a barrier to access. So this is essentially what they are. And when you look at March and March, equally they are attacking the hard-won democratic rights. The common denominator with them is that where all of us are now fighting for a quality universal public health care, they are actually, in the case of March and March, saying, well, migrants must be kept out of that. Their right in the Constitution, which says everyone has a right, to a basic health care, that right does not or should not apply to migrants. They have to ban them from accessing that. They are saying they must be using private health care just as much as obviously AfriForum is insisting that the private health care should be defended against an attempt to, universalize this particular health care. So what basically is a common denominator between these two is that they are essentially anti-poor, anti-black, working class, and of course, in any way, all of them are united in their attempt to reverse the democratic gains that the working class have won over time and in the struggle against apartheid.
Now, how does this division benefit employers, business, and political interests? I ask this because now you're arguing that both organizations ultimately contribute to dividing the working class. How does it then benefit employers and business and political interests?
Well, let's understand it, right? I think AfriForum, they are very clear in terms of their defense of the white privilege. That is a racialized labor regime where basically white minority acted as a racial caste, loading over the rest of the black working class that were being exploited ruthlessly on the basis of a colonial wage slavery that shot up the profits of the multinational corporations that have monopolized the ownership of the economy, of the minerals, of the land in this country. And of course, when you see at March and March, what they are doing by basically disenfranchising, the black or sections of the black working class, that is the black migrants, they know for a fact it's not true that you're going to remove out of this country millions of people who have run away, from conflict zone where a return means a certain death. They're not going to go. All that is going to happen is that they are going to be disenfranchised. They are being terrorized into submission, meaning where they actually work, they are completely at the mercy of an employer who can abuse them without any recourse to CCMAs, to labor costs, any enjoyment of basic rights in the basic conditions of employment, or anything that has been achieved by workers by way of collective bargaining and in those industries that are centralized. Because a worker who is terrorized, who is traumatized in the way that we've seen migrants increasingly being so, that is not a worker that is going to demand a fair wage. That is not a worker who's going to demand a leave days, who's going to demand, a provident fund and any of the benefits that the workers have worked and have struggled hard for in order to be able to win. So
Now,
this
Mametlwe,
is a common denominator.
you have drawn parallels between calls for stricter identity documentation and the apartheid-era pass laws. How are these two similar?
Well, I mean, the whole foundation of the past Tombas laws was that you had workers that basically required an identification. That was the basis on which, where they are regulated, where they could be, and so on and so on. So the black people in this country had to justify their right to exist in certain places, to be in certain areas, in certain times, and all of that. And that apparatus of control, but also a terror enforced by the police, as well as the wide vigilante groups, which also existed at the time. It was all essential to maintain the system of a cheap black migrant labor, which unfortunately, 30 years into black majority democratic rule, that system more or less continues. Even if it has been undermined in serious way by the end of apartheid, tremendous gains that have been made by the workers. What much and much now want to do effectively, where now black workers, because how do you tell that this worker is not a South African, but is Mozambican and so on? Because I can tell you, my complexion with my, somebody from Zimbabwe is the same. The only way that you're going to have to impose what they are doing is that you're going to have to require that every black man must be able to carry an ID, and that ID can be demanded by anybody on the spot, and to be able then to assess if that person qualifies to be where they say they are. I mean, this movement, and here it says all migrants, from Zimbabwe and other things and so on. But we remember, or rather we should remember, that as you can see today at Madlanga Commission, the man is understand is a man, is a leader of a National Colored Party who says all people of Eastern Cape must be leaving Western Cape and so on. I have just seen now, a poster of a party called Buputatswana Civil, a movement, meaning people want to create or recreate the Bantustan or Buputatswana. So we have been wrong.
Unfortunately, Mametlwe, I wish we had more time, but we have to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update. That's Mametlwe Sebei, President of the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, joining us on the line. It is 12:30, and our news headlines up next.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV.